Hey everyone, it's Lexi. So in today's video I'll be sharing with you all the books that I plan on reading in the month of February. So even though February is the shortest month of the year, I'm being very overambitious with the books that I want to read. And I think part of it too is because I've just slowly gotten into listening to nonfiction books or memoirs via audiobooks. So some of these are already books that I've placed, audiobooks that I placed on hold. So it just depends on when they come in or not. So it's kind of based on the timing of that. So whenever they come in, I will listen to these. But yeah, so this is a kind of smorgasbord of genres. We have kind of, you know, lovey-dovey Valentine's Day rom-com books. We have some memoirs, and then we have, in honor of Black History Month, I do have some books that talk about racism and kind of feminism and all those things. So I want to, especially Black History Month, I want to kind of honor some of the books that have been written about it so I can educate myself and all that stuff. So like I said, they're all over in terms of genre. So without further ado, let's get started. So speaking of racism and basically an institution that has been based on racism, one of the audiobooks that I'm currently on hold for at the library is Spare by Prince Harry. I was really excited. I got like a physical copy of this because I do want to have one for my own, but I know the audiobook, he is narrating it himself, and I think that would just make for a very interesting reading experience. And I find too with memoirs, especially if they are like read by the author themselves, I find that makes for a very unique reading experience, and you can hear it how the author intended it. You can also get some emotion in the author's voice as well with some certain things, so I think that's the way to go. Currently I'm fourth in line, so hopefully I'll be able to get this one soon. But this is his much talked about memoir, talking about growing up in kind of the royal spotlight, all of the other things going on behind the scenes, you know, falling in love with Meghan and kind of the fallout of everything after that. I do very much love drama, so I'm very excited to kind of, you know, dive into this one. And I, like I said, listening to the audiobook and hearing him narrate it, I think will make for a fun reading experience. So yeah, like I said, really excited. Hopefully I'll be able to get this one pretty soon. So continuing on with my Greenbone Saga marathon, the next book that I need to read, the final book in the trilogy, is Jade Legacy by Fonda. Like I said, this is the third book in the series, and because I don't want to spoil anything, I won't really talk about the synopsis of this one. Rather, I'll focus more on the general synopsis of the series. So it's basically like an urban fantasy, and we follow this kind of, not like the royal family, but they are the main members of one of the clans of the fictional island of Kong. And on this island of Kong, they have this natural resource called jade, which people who have are susceptible to it can have basically superhuman powers, such as they can jump really fast, or they can hear things, or they can perceive things. So obviously that makes it a very valuable resource. So in addition to the world wanting to get their hands on it, the island of Kong is kind of split between two clans, and they're also at war with each other, and it kind of goes off from there. I would say the first book, the first 100 pages took me a while to really get into. There's a lot of stuff going on in terms of just figuring out the characters, kind of this world system, but once you kind of get your bearings, the series is really enjoyable. In addition to having some action sequences, I'd say it's more of a political intrigue fantasy, which I think makes it really fun and interesting, and kind of adds elements, I think, to kind of fantasy that aren't necessarily kind of the forefront, and in this case it's kind of center stage of a lot of the stuff that is going on, and you kind of follow different narrations that eventually kind of become intertwined, and I think that is really well done. So it'll be very interesting to see how this series ends. Like, you know how complicated this book is when they literally have like character lists and like what their position is, and it like goes on and on. So yeah, but I'm really excited. My boyfriend said this series ends really well. He thought the conclusion was really well written, so I'm very excited. And yeah, all 680 or 700 pages of this, I am very excited to read and dive in. But yeah, it will take me a while, but it will be worth every minute I put into it because I'm just very curious to see how this storyline concludes. So next up I have The Family Bones by Elle Marr, and this was an advanced ebook version that was sent to me by the publisher, so thank you to everyone over there for sending me an advanced copy. If you guys are curious, I will have a review that goes up on the date that this book will be published, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But this one sounded really interesting. I also received a copy of, I think it's like Strangers We Know, which is also written by this author, which also sounded really interesting, and it was on like my books I need to finish by 2022, but I wasn't able to finish it. So this will be my first book by this author that I've read, and I'm very excited. So it says, psychology student Olivia's family is notorious among true crime buffs. Faced with a legacy of psychopathy that spans generations, Olivia has spent much of her academic life trying to answer one chilling question: nature or nurture? Although she keeps a safe distance from her blood relatives for years, Olivia agrees to attend a weekend reunion. After all, her fiancé is eager to meet her future in-laws, and the gathering may give her a chance to interview her elusive grandfather about the family traits. But nothing is ever peaceful among the Ericksons for long. Olivia's favorite cousin is found dead in a nearby lake. Then another family member disappears. As a violent storm isolates the group further, Olivia fears rise faster than the river, and an uninvited guest is about to join the party. True crime podcaster Birdie Tan has uncovered a disturbing mystery in her latest investigation, and she's following it right to the Ericksons' mountain resort. There's a deadly twist in the family plot that even Olivia doesn't see coming. So I think that one just sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun, and I think like it just sounds really intriguing, and I do love like not only like nonfiction but also fiction that kind of delves into nature versus nurture. I think it's a very interesting concept and like argument, and I'm curious to see how this plays out. It sounds like a very intense thriller, and I cannot wait to dive in. So next up, these are kind of like my Valentine's Day rom-com reads, and it is Book Lovers and Beach Read by Emily Henry, the famous TikTok author. And I read People We Meet on Vacation a couple years ago, and I've really enjoyed it, so I want to pick up her other works. I feel like there's people who say People We Meet on Vacation is the best one, or I think it's Beach Read people say is their favorites, or Book Lovers, I don't remember. So I'm very curious to see which one out of the three I really enjoy. I do love, like, I think if you love kind of emotional rom-coms where you're like, you know, screaming and fighting and kissing in the rain, like those type of things, then I think you'll like Emily Henry. I think like this one is, yeah, two rivals. I think this one is enemies to lovers, and then I'm not sure what this one is, but especially for like rom-coms, I don't really want to know too much about the synopsis. So if you guys are curious, you can go look up the plot, but for this I kind of just want to dive right in, not really knowing too much. And lastly, these are the nonfiction books that I want to read in honor of Black History Month for February. And so this is the first one. I just got the audiobook for this one last night, so this is one that I'm going to be currently listening to on my drives to and from school, and it is Caste by Isabel Wilkerson. This is one that I heard a lot about, and it was obviously brought back to kind of popularity after the events of George Floyd. So I think these books are very important, and I think it's important to always keep yourself educated and consume as much material as possible, so you can learn to be a better anti-racist, and this is one of the ones that everyone always recommends. So it says, Isabel Wilkerson gives us a massive portrait of an unseen phenomenon in America as she explores through an immersive, deeply researched narrative and stories about real people how America today and throughout its history has been shaped by a hidden caste system, a rigid hierarchy of human rankings. Beyond race, class, or other factors, a powerful caste system influences people's lives and behavior and the nation's fate. Linking the caste systems of America, India, and Nazi Germany, Wilkerson explores 8 pillars that underlie caste systems across civilizations, including divine will, bloodlines, and stigma. Using riveting stories about people including Martin Luther King Jr., baseballs, Satchel Paige, a single father and his toddler son, and Wilkerson herself, she shows the ways that the insidious undertow of caste is experienced every day. She documents how the Nazis studied the racial system in America to plan their outcasting of the Jews. She discussed why the cruel logic of caste requires a bottom rung for those in the middle to measure themselves against. So I think this just sounds really interesting. I think it will kind of show how these societal like hierarchies and kind of racist undertones are very much integrated into the fabric of society in a structure in a way that we may not like be obvious to us. So I think this will be very interesting to explore. I think it's really interesting too how she ties in kind of Nazism and how it was modeled after the US, which I think is very eye-opening for a lot of people. Like, I think that is very shocking, and I still think that hierarchy is still prevalent today. So yeah, this is the audiobook that I got from the library, and I'll quickly show you the other two that I've also put on hold as well. So first up, I have The Sum of Us by Heather McGhee, and this is one I heard they were interviewing this author on the news like a year or so ago, and she was just talking, and just the things she was talking about I thought were very interesting, and so it was kind of in promotion for this book, so I decided to pick it up because I was like, that sounds very, very interesting. And it is the National Book Award long list, so it obviously is very well critically received. It says, Heather McGhee's specialty is the American economy and the mystery of why it often fails the American public. From financial crises to rising student debt to collapsing public infrastructure, she found a root problem: racism in our politics and policy, making that costs us all. It is this common denominator of our most vexing public problems, the dysfunction of our democracy, and the spiritual moral dilemmas that grip us all. But how did this happen, and is there a way out? McGhee embarks on a journey across the country, telling what we lose when we buy into the zero-sum paradigm, the idea that progress for some of us must come at the expense of others. Again, this sounded just really interesting, and what she was talking about, I don't really remember the details of it, but I just found it to be super, super interesting, and I think it's very interesting to see how kind of racism and racist ideas still play a part in the like economic system here, which I think is a very interesting avenue to explore in kind of racist ideology within our society. So yeah, this one I'm very excited to pick up. And lastly, this is a very popular book as well, and it is Hood Feminism by Mikki Kendall. This is a book that my sister actually recommended. She read this a long time ago, and again, it's been on my shelf, but I feel like for Black History Month, I think that's like when I like to really kind of focus on being intentional about reading these type of books. So it says, today's feminist movement has a glaring blind spot, and paradoxically, it is women. Mainstream feminists rarely talk about meeting basic needs as a feminist issue, argues Mikki Kendall, but food security, access to quality education, safe neighborhoods, a living wage, and medical care are all feminist issues. All too often, however, the focus is not on basic survival for the many, but on increasing privileges for the few. How can we stand in solidarity as a movement, Kendall asks, when there is the distinct likelihood that some women are oppressing others? So I think this is a collection of essays talking about different kind of aspects, so it kind of breaks it down. So it has like gun violence, hunger, missing and murdered, fear and feminism, race, poverty, and politics. So I think this one sounds really interesting. Like I said, my sister highly recommended this one, and again, this is one that actually had, out of all of these books, this is the one that had the most number of holds. So I think this is probably the one that is very common for people to read. So this one probably will take the longest for me to get the audiobook for. So I feel like some of these will trickle into March, just depending on when the audiobooks come in. But for the most part, I'm really excited about the books that I have to read. Again, I feel like I'm very overshooting with this, but there were so many, like especially now that I've gotten into audiobooks again, especially for nonfiction / memoirs, I find that it makes for a kind of reading experience that is a little bit more enjoyable when I am driving to school, and especially if it's read by the narrator. I think that kind of adds a new element to it. So yeah, like I said, I'm excited to dive into these books. But thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments below what books you plan on reading this month and all that fun stuff. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye guys.